Hey everybody. Sorry that I'm so late with doing videos and so I'm so behind. Um, we went to the Garden State Comic Con 2 weeks ago and we came home and the very next day Miss Stippling was saying, I don't feel too good. Well, she got a cold. And then I got the cold. And so I just, with the coughing and sneezing, I just could not do a video the last 2 weeks. So I'm behind. So we're going to be doing week 26 of signed comics. We're about 2, 3 weeks behind. So tomorrow I'll do week 27. So next weekend I'll do week 28, 28, and then I should be almost caught up. So, but as you can see, I'm still working the boy and his dog. I was working strictly on just doing the dog, but as I was going along, and plus also I was under the weather, I didn't want to be doing the meticulous, all this stuff like the hair and doing the delicate work. So I started working on the boy. So we started down here with doing his dark shirt, and then I moved into doing his under his chin, and then around his face. So that's where I am right now with working on this. I really would like to have this done by next Saturday. So we'll see what happens. Got to do a lot of work still. But really, for some ways, because of once I get these broad areas on the boy done, it's basically going to be finished because doing the delicate work on the dog, that's not really going to take all that much time. So that's the reason why I was just doing the small dots here because there'll be a lot of blending in his face. So for this video, I'm just working up here where the darks are going to be. And like this dark here, I'll be pulling it out and I'll be doing the blending from here to here. So, and I'll be doing that off camera. So right now I'm just working on this part right up here. So, but week 26, we start with day 173, and that's the Maze Agency, issue number 1, signed by Adam Hughes. This is where Adam Hughes got his start. We all love Adam Hughes. He's an extraordinary penciler and artist. This is where he got his start. He was just doing pencils. But even then, you can see where he was like really. Uh, he was. You can tell that yes, he was influenced by Alan Davis, but he was really honing his skills and making his own style to make his own name for himself. And it carries through when you look at the most recent piece that he's done versus Maze Agency issue number 1. You can still see that Adam Hughes style. You can tell that he works heavily with reference, which is good, and he uses reference correctly, not light boxing an image or whatever, like other artists do. And those other artists, some of them do it right, some of them do it wrong. But Adam Hughes, he shows how you got. He's definitely the example of referencing your artwork. So that's where anybody wonders, like, how does he draw like that? He uses reference. He may not. He'll get someone to take that, to stand in that pose or sit in that pose or lie in that pose, and then he draws it. And then after he draws it, he goes in with inks and color. So, and then after that, we had day 174, Ministry in Space, issue number 3, signed by Laura Martin, the colorist. And I really like this one. This was like a what if story with alternate history, and instead of the United States uh, winning the space race, it was won and achieved in secret by Britain. Britain is the one that went to space first. They went to the moon first, but they kept it secret. They didn't advertise it. So as a result, when the United States decide that they're going to launch a manned craft into space, the British are now at a crossroads of how do they handle it. I had the last issue signed just because I loved how they concluded it with showing how uh, by the time the United States was going into space, England had already created a moon base. They had already colonized Mars, and they are on their way out to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. So, and I really liked I like the designs of the spaceships, the overall architectural designs. A lot of really, I enjoyed it a lot, and so that's the reason why I had Laura sign it. And when I had her sign, she was like, "Oh wow, I haven't seen one of these in a while," which is always what I want to hear from an artist. Is like, "How that's how much of a fan I am of your work. That instead of doing the latest and greatest that you've done, I found something slightly obscure that you did, but you don't get a lot of credit for." And it was like I always say, always when you're going to get books signed, get the book signed that you like and you enjoy, because you're going to have much more. When looking back at the books that you have signed, you're going to be much more satisfied with those books being signed than the latest and greatest. So, and then day 175. Day 175, we go to New 52, issue number 1, free comic book day. I had this one signed by Ivan Rios and Joe Prado. Uh, they were the big superstar team when the New 52 came about. Remember, they were the ones that really came forward and really, where they really got their light to shine and really took note, people took notice of them, was when they did Blackest Night and then Brightest Day. So they followed it up with doing New 52. They did Aquaman, and then they went on and did Justice League of America. Remember, they were the one doing Justice League of America when they did the introduction of the Crime Syndicate with the big crossover event and started their the event book of Forever Evil. So so I had him. Now, overall, I was not a big. Overall, looking back on it, the New 52 was a disappointment. The only reason why I was getting so many New 52 books was the artwork. It really had nothing to do with the story. It had to do more with the artwork. I will admit that Aquaman was probably the best book that they had that came out of the New 52. Most people would probably say it was Batman with the Court of Owls with Greg Capullo. For me, it was Aquaman, because Aquaman's one of my favorite characters. Uh, when everybody else was little kids, and you get a whole bunch of kids get together playing superheroes, yeah, I want to be Aquaman. Why? Because I spent a lot of my time as a child at the beach along South Jersey Shore. And it's not Superman that's breaking up those waves and riding those waves in. No, it's Aquaman. So that's the reason why I was a big Aquaman fan, was because I could be Aquaman when I was playing in the waves along the shore. So, and then after that, so day 176 is Nightwing number 38, signed by Carl Story. Again, I really like this, how they had Nightwing with his own story, and basically Bloodhaven, which is where he operated out of, was the neighboring city to Gotham. And I really liked how it's one of those where it's like, it's not Gotham, but a lot of Batman's nemesis uh, hide out there and plot their I don't know what they're going to steal and what evil doings they're going to do. And so it gave Nightwing the ability to have his own city that was just like just like Gotham, but it had its own look and feel, and he was its protector. So as a result, a lot of Nightwing's uh, foils and the bad guys they fought were Batman villains, but there were he as a result of him having his own book, there were quite a few create villains created just for that book that were his own villains to fight. And that's one of the things I really liked about this. And I really wish they would go back to re-exploring Bloodhaven. Like, even if it was not Nightwing, whether it be the Spoiler and Oracle or an Orphan, uh, Nightwing, Tim Hunter. Give those guys Bloodhaven to work out of. So that way it's one of those where it's like most of the big bads are in Gotham, but Bloodhaven still has a strong criminal element. And that way you can have those characters truly have their light to shine without bumping into Batman uh, throughout their adventures or Batman looking over them. So it gives them a chance to, really, like I said, their own chance to shine and have their own stories without the need of having Batman looking over them. So I really did like this, and this one really illustrates it because uh, Robin is having to deal with a riot or a breakout at Blackgate Prison, and he pretty much gets his butt handed to him by the villains. And as a result, he has to go to uh, Oracle's clock tower to rest and to heal from his wounds. So, and then after that, we go into Nightwing issue number 42. This issue is signed by Greg Land and inked by Mark McKenna. This is Greg Land's one of the, when I was talking about referencing and how Adam Hughes does it right. Yes, I would argue that while Greg Land, if you look at his early work, you can see that he is using reference material. Problem I see is that he went too heavy with referencing, that he referenced everything to the point where he stopped trying to manipulate the image where it's like, okay, here is this porn star in this pose, now let's manipulate the image. He wouldn't. He just draws line for line how it was and then just put clothes on top of them so you wouldn't see the boobs and the tits and the uh, vagina. So I look at it where it's like he does a great job of referencing, but I think he references too much to the point where his artwork it reminds me of the Romanticism era of art, where it loses the characters when they might be fighting. They've lost their motion and action. So where it's drawn beautifully, it looks stiff. And instead of her, let's say it's uh, Captain Marvel, okay, the female Captain Marvel. She no longer when you might draw her where she's flying, but because he referenced her when it was it's a shot where instead of where she's like this, and where she was like lying in a bed, it just looks like she's like floating or in a cloud instead of flying. And so, and it's valid criticism. Like I said, if I'm going to compare it, I'm going to compare it to the Romanticism. The Romanticism era, characters looked the paintings of portraits of like a guy on his horse, like a Napoleon general. He looks more like he is posing on a stuffed horse as opposed to actually sitting on a horse and really like clinging to it because the horse is rearing up. So that's where I would differentiate between Adam Hughes and Greg Land. Is that if Adam Hughes is going to have like Batman on a horse, okay, and the horse is rearing up, he's really going to manipulate that image, so you really get that sense of Batman being on that horse, fighting for control as the horse rears up. Whereas Greg Land, it just looks like the horse is a stuffed animal, and the person's just sitting up there, no problem whatsoever. Haha, I'm sitting on top of my horse. So now this issue also, the reason why I liked it so much was, of course, Greg Land. He has a stripper on it right off the bat, and here I think it's like Nightwing is there with his fellow police officers, and I think he just like graduated from the academy or something like that. And I found so having the stripper dressed up as a cop, found that very humorous. I thought, and then of course it also had the sub story of the other vigilante calling himself Nightwing, and so he was actually on the cover. So I really liked how that was done. So that's the reason why I had that issue picked. And then after the DCs, we go back into Marvel. with day 177. And we have, oh, I'm sorry, day 177 was Nightwing 142. So day 178 is New Mutants issue 45, inks done by Kyle Baker. Now this one, it is important to understand. Jackson Guise was the penciler, and here this was a very hard issue for him to do. Apparently, he'd had a loved one die, whether from suicide or whatever it was. They died. This issue was about suicide, and so it was very hard for uh, Jackson to get the pencils done or in a timely manner. So Kyle had to rush to get these pencils done, and because this issue dealt with suicide, it was very hard, and it was actually, you think about it, when they talk about like comic books, how like that issue with Green Lantern and Green Arrow, where he finds out that Speedy's a junkie, or they do the issue of Spider-Man where they had a fictional drug. How like everybody talks about those being monumental, and in comics, I find this issue of New Mutants to be as pivotal in comics as those, because it bluntly addresses teenage suicide. And what it is that here the New Mutants are going to a neighboring private school for a school dance. And one of the kids at this neighboring school has just discovered he's a mutant. And he's petrified by it. And he feels like an outcast and he doesn't belong. He's scared. So he's hanging out with the New Mutant characters out on the patio, and he really wants them to like him. So he cracks some anti-mutant jokes, which of course fall flat with the New Mutants because they're mutants. And that ends up being the tipping point. And they don't do anything. They don't berate him or anything. They just like don't laugh. And he's like, "Oh my God, they don't like me because I'm cracking these anti-mutant jokes." And oh my God, and he's just all paranoid and depressed. And he ends up taking his own life. He ends up committing suicide. And I think it was Kitty Pryde. She sneaks over to the school, sneaks into his room, and finds out that he was a mutant. And his mutant ability was he could create these beautiful, beautiful statues out of air. And she goes to touch it, and because in here it just disappears into dust because he has passed away, and there's no means to hold on to it. And Kitty then, at the end of the issue, does a speech, like a eulogy at his funeral. Uh, Basically, it's not a pro mutant speech. It's a pretty much a hey, it's a loss of life, another voice of an individual, of a young voice, of a young individual, and his voice is gone forever for us never to know what he was thinking. And it actually was a very good speech that you can incorporate for any scenario. And so I found this specific issue to be very impactful. And I mean, like I said, I mean, to tackle teen suicide in a comic back then, that's significant. So, and so when I had Kyle sign this issue, and he goes, "Why is everybody? Why do I get so many people signing this issue?" I told him why, and he was like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, you know what?" And he's the one who said, he goes, "I think it's like it was." And he goes, "And not for certain. I think he had like a family member died of suicide or had recently died or something like that." So it was a very hard issue for him to do. So, so to hear Kyle tell me about that, I was really like, "Wow." And so that made it even more impactful. The thing about it, he didn't get someone to fill in for the rest of the issue. He just he struggled through what he was going through, to get the job done. So, and then of course after that we have day 179, New Mutants again, and this is the issue, guys. This is the issue where Bird Brain debuts, and you all know I am a huge Bird Brain fan. Uh, I, when it comes to forgotten characters, okay, with DC it's Vibe, with Marvel it is Bird Brain. I loved Bird Brain as soon as he showed up. This issue is signed by Louise Simonson, the writer, June Brigman, the penciler, and Kevin Nolan, who did the cover inks. I don't know if he did the cover completely or if he just did the inks on top of June. I don't know, but he did the inks, or he did the cover. And I really liked Birdbrain. The whole thing that I really liked about Birdbrain was he was a mutant, but he had a childlike mentality. He at first when they first uh, when the New Mutants first get him, they don't think he can talk. They just think he's like a wild animal. That's a mutant. That's a wild animal. Find out that yes, he can communicate. He can talk, and through that, but because he's learning to talk, he has a very childlike sensibility. And I thought that that they did a much better job of that childlike mentality and view through life with Birdbrain better than they did Warlock. And I said this to to Louise when I've seen her at shows that I know like at the end of the Fall of the New Mutants, Doug dies. And I said to her, I goes, I would have much rather if he had Doug and Warlock die and Birdbrain take his place. Because I liked Birdbrain so much more than I did Warlock. In fact, I didn't like Warlock until they brought Doug back as Cypher. Because remember, uh, Doug died in Fall of the New Mutants, and then uh, right after Rob Liefeld took over and they're doing the Extinction Agenda, they killed Warlock. They eventually brought him back as Psylocke, which was a combination of Cypher and Warlock. I found that to be a much more interesting character than either of the characters individually. So I would have preferred if they'd gotten rid of Warlock, Cypher they just killed, and they kept Birdbrain on the team. Another reason why I really liked it was, again, he had that childlike sensibility, and it made the students the teachers. And I really like that because here it's like the whole series was about them being students, being mutant students. And here it's just like it was. And here's the thing: many times when it's a private school, it's the responsibility of the older students to mentor the younger students. And I saw that with Birdbrain and the New Mutants. All the New Mutants, they're akin to having a responsibility towards Birdbrain and having them understand how things work. No, you can't do that. This is how you do this. And I like that how he was like, and because Birdbrain trusted them, there was a greater possibility of that sense of betrayal, but also that greater sense of him feeling betrayal if they had to chastise him or correct him on something in a harsh manner. So again, I just found him a much more interesting character, and I've said all of this stuff to Louise. If Louise could go back in time, and in some ways I'm glad she didn't because you know damn well if Louise had kept Birdbrain on, Rob Liefeld would have bastardized Birdbrain. You know he would have. So, but no, I really like Birdbrain, and so having this issue signed by so many creators, it's one of those I look at and go, yes, 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 yes. And so this is one of those books where it's like I'm really happy that I've got not just Louise's signature, but June's signature and Kevin's signature. So I really, again, one of my favorites. So and the whole line. I've got like almost all these following. It's signed by either Louise or Brett Breeding. So, guys, I'm just about done. Like tomorrow, I'm going to be doing week 27, and then next Saturday, I'll be doing week 28. That should have us all but completely caught up. The following Sunday is the Hershey Comic Con. I'll be going to that on Sunday morning. So most likely Sunday, I will not be doing a video. So, guys, you all have a great day. I'm having a great day. You know I am. And remember, guys, life is stressful. So please always take it one dot at a time.